We have a guest in the studio. We'll be joined by another one as we continue talking about the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and the progress that's been made in the country. But before we welcome our guest, let her hear the proverb from CT.
Yes, when you raise a leopard, you shouldn't be upset when it eats your goat.
When you raise a leopard, you shouldn't be upset when it eats your goat.
Our guest seems to be a good
she has raised leopards and she knows.
She knows.
She has eaten her
her
goats.
goats. She raised leopards, ended up only with leopards. The goats had been eaten.
But she was left with the sweet potato vines and all the other things that goats eat.
Yeah.
Those ones are not eaten by the leopard. Yeah. The guest is Winfred Okumu. She's the Deputy Executive Director at Africa Youth Trust. She is also the coordinator in the Access to Justice project, and she'll tell us more about this. Good morning, Winfred.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation.
Thank you.
So how many leopards are those that you were rearing?
I'm not aware of any leopards.
And how did you get them? Is KWS aware? When you hear that proverb, what's your interpretation of that proverb?
My interpretation, I think I'll look at it in how parents raise their children.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so parenting is key, especially when you are bringing up your children. So if you don't, there's this say that says that if you spare the rod and then
Spare the rod.
Spoil
the child.
Yes.
So if you don't raise your children well, then it means in future you'll really have a big problem. And now I'm trying to connect it also with the cases of rape cases that we have in the country. There's high prevalence rate in terms of rape cases and also defilement. Yeah.
Tell us about the organization that you work for, Africa Youth Trust.
So Africa Youth Trust is a youth-led organization that was established in the year 2005. And basically, it's a model whereby we are trying to bring youths on board when it comes to socio-economic and political space. So, because we've seen that for us to, in terms of development, we need to put youths on board. And we've seen that youths are very powerful key when it comes to development. So we want to direct that energy among the youths in Kenya, even in Africa, because we want to replicate all our activities in Africa. We are working in the Horn of Africa, southern part. We're also trying to penetrate in the southern part. And in Kenya, we are working in 12 counties. And one of our pillars, we have 5 pillars. One is youth and good governance. We have gender equality and economic empowerment. We have livelihood resilience. We have organization capacity and climate smart agriculture. So in women economic empowerment, gender equality and women economic empowerment, we have 3 projects that are currently running. We have access to justice, that is dealing with survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. Then we have young urban women and women economic empowerment. So basically, I'm here because of access to justice, being the fact we are celebrating 16 days of activism. So we implement access to justice in the informal sector of Nairobi, that is Mkuru, the entire Mkuru, and we get our support from ActionAid Kenya. And what we do is we are using an innovative mobile technology. It's called 21094. So 21094, we realized that most of the cases of sexual and gender-based violence were not being reported, either because of the past experiences when the survivors are reporting such cases. So we felt it was very comfortable for survivors to to report such cases using the 21094. You can just try 21094. You simply send the word help to 21094, and then from there we'll be receiving the cases. So as the person who is reporting the case, you'll receive a case number. Then from that case number, we are able now to follow up. So we have the system operators on board. So these system operators have been trained on how to respond to cases of sexual and gender-based violence. So they will get back to the case number, because the case number will come to us, case number and telephone number. So we are able to get back to you just to make inquiry. What are some of the support that you need from us? So from there, they're able to identify its cases related to gender-based violence. Then we are able now to pick it up and we are able to work with our survivors to access legal, medical, and psychosocial support. So we are not working in silos. We are also working with police officers around our area of implementation, whereby these police officers, they've been trained on standard operating procedure in terms of gender prevention and response. Because initially we had issue with the police officers, especially in areas that we are implementing, because they are really causing more damage to the survivor. Because instead of supporting the survivor, they'll be asking, what were you doing? Because you find that some of these cases, they happen at odd hours. So they were asking, at that time, what were you doing? You see such kind of things. You are not supposed to justify the action. You're supposed to support the survivor. Because even if this survivor was... because right now people have got issues with the way women dress, you see. So they were like, alikuwa amevaa nguo short ndio maana hata alirepwa. That is not the issue. Because we are even asking ourselves, what about children who are being defiled as age of 3 months? They are being defiled. How can you justify that action? So we felt that it's good also to bring police officers on board, because that is the first place that our survivors normally report the cases. So we train them on how they're supposed to support these survivors in accessing justice. Then we are also working with the health sectors around our area, whereby we bring them on board. So we are able, in terms even of evidence preservation, they know what to do. We've also formed, it's called GBV Technical Working Group, whereby we bring all the stakeholders on board. After bringing them on board, we are able to pick one of the key issues that needs advocacy. Because we've realized that when it comes to access to justice for survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, the process takes it's a process that never ends. You find that maybe somebody started pursuing case even in 2014, the case is still in court. So we are trying to identify what are some of the issues that are really delaying that justice for survivors. And you find that when this delay comes, then in terms of even this person has not even, in terms of mental well-being, even if that case repeat itself, this person will not even feel comfortable reporting. So we are trying to identify what are some of the issues that come up. And then even in our project, we've established right now, this year, we have 181 survivors that have experienced sexual and gender-based violence. So we are trying also with our survivors to bring them on board. We are offering psychosocial support to these survivors. There is individual counseling based on the scenario. We also have group counseling for these women. And then from there, we've also trained them on economic empowerment, because one of the key issues that normally cause GBV, number one, is poverty. Most of them, they don't even have resources. So we are bringing them on board. We are training them on economic empowerment. We're even able to identify the economic pathways, the ones who wants to go back to school, the ones who wants to venture into business. Then we train them. So we are also linking with the government credit institution, like we have the Women Enterprise Fund, Uwezo Fund, Youth Enterprise Fund. Then they come on board. Then as AYT through ActionAid, we are able to give them seed capital. So this capital, we believe that is going to improve their economic livelihood, because once they have resources, then it will be very easy for them even to make decisions of even leaving that toxic relationship. Because you find majority of women do not leave this toxic relationship because maybe the perpetrator is the intimate partner who perpetuates the violence. You get it? So making decision becomes a challenge, because she'll be asking myself, where do I go?
So are we saying essentially that we're still having... So here we are saying that there are moves that are being made to end gender-based violence, right? But there are certain circumstances within which the victim cannot actually leave.
Yes.
So it continues, it is a continuous state of violence being meted upon. We know it's happening, but there's very little we can do to remove this individual from that situation. Is that what we're saying?
That's what we are saying, because when you look at the economic status, because majority, when you look at the percentage, we really have high prevalence rate of sexual and gender-based violence among women and girls, which is not being reported. And we look at the economic status of these women, they're not economically empowered.
Okay, so, sorry.
Yes.
They are staying in this situation because of the economic aspect.
Yes.
This person who is the perpetrator is also the provider.
Exactly.
Okay. So now when we say we know who these women are, we know who these girls are, you know, whatever the case, but there's very little, are we saying that there's nothing we can do to remove this girl from this situation or remove this woman from this situation?
We can do something. Number one, we need to look at what actually causes gender-based violence. Number one, like the survivors that we are dealing with, majority of them, when you look at cases that happens to them, it's domestic violence.
Okay.
We have domestic violence, which is very high, and sometimes even removing this person from that place, because we are talking about power imbalance. This person has got power over the survivor because he's the key provider. So it becomes a challenge for this person to make the decision. But once they come to our counseling sessions, because we have a counselor, a professional counselor that really supports the survivors to make a formed opinion. So it's very easy for them now to move out. Because right now, we are able to identify what are some of the economic pathways. Maybe the ones who wants to venture, let's say we are talking about a child here. This time we are able to take her maybe to a safe place, and then we are also able to provide education. Then if it's a woman, we are able to bring her out, she attends the session, and then we also provide seed capital after attending training. We also bring the affirmative action government officers on board. So because the seed capital that we are giving, it's not that much. Through ActionAid, it's not enough. So we want to link them also with other government credit institution whereby they can access the funds. Because right now we have funds. I'm happy that we even have the Hustle Fund, whereby they can access such funds to improve their economic livelihood. Yes.
Okay. There's something I need to ask. You remove the victim from this environment in which they've been violated. You seek to understand why it is that this violence is the way it is. The violator, what do you do to the violator? What do you do for the violator? Because you remove this victim, some other person will fill that particular space. And if this violator is a serial violator, he will
continue.
Oh yes, by all
Jump
means.
on to the next one.
Yes, exactly. And since from what you've said, I get the impression that the numbers of these issues is on the increase, not on the decrease. So it means these examples of violations are being mirrored elsewhere. So clearly it's a problem, and a big one. From your understanding and from what you have done, what would you say is the common thread that runs through these acts of violence? What brings them about? What makes these people, why do they become perpetrators of this violence?
Okay, what I can say, number one, when you look at the legal frameworks that we have, number one, they are not supporting the survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. And if I can talk about the safe house right now, we don't have government safe house. The safe house that are there that are supposed to support survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, they are private sector. And this private sector, there is a duration that our survivors are supposed to stay there. Remember, these cases are very high. And therefore, they're supposed to be rescued from that perpetrator. Because if this survivor keeps on staying in that household where this perpetrator is, the end result is death. And we've seen even in the media. Most of the cases we've had a high prevalence rate of femicide in the country. So what we want, it's if we can have, right now we are really advocating for comprehensive shelter house. When I talk about comprehensive safe house, is whereby we have a safe house whereby we have the medical aspect, we have the legal aspect, we have the psychosocial aspect, and we have the economic empowerment aspect. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about whereby a survivor is being rescued from that hostile environment, being kept in a safe place whereby she's able to access legal aspect under one shelter. Because when you look at scenario right now, you report to the police officer, you share the same experience that you underwent, the traumatic experience. You leave from the police station, you go to the hospital, you narrate the same story. It's like this person is reminding you the ordeal situation that you went through. Every time. And it's not comfortable expressing such experience. You leave the medical aspect, you go to the counselor, you are explaining the same. So you find some of the survivors will say, I am done. You people, you are not helping me, I am done. You go to the to court, you the same thing. So what we want, if the government can start implementing a safe house, whereby it is comprehensive, we have the legal aspect. Now, it's like the first contact person maybe might be a medical person. So your files move from one department to another. Then you are also safe in that in that room, and you are able also to go counseling aspect, the psychosocial support, and then from there they are able to, now if they want to reintegrate you back to the society, already you are going to be, if you can link now the affirmative action fund, a certain percentage can go to the safe house, whereby for those people who wants to venture into business, let's say you don't want to go into that toxic relationship, you are able to be given seed capital, and then you can even decide, I want to change my location. Maybe if you are staying in Nairobi, you can even decide you want to go to Mombasa. So you will be very safe. So those are some of the things that you are really struggling with. And then the other thing is the issue of gender responsive public services. When I talk about gender responsive public services, these are some of the services that it is the mandate of the government to ensure that its citizen has. When you're talking about water, because we've seen people are even, there's what we call sex for water. Okay? The water is not there. So what will first, because water is a basic need. So if it's not there, these women are forced to walk long distance to fetch water. And in that process, something can happen, because majority of women wake up even at 3. So what happens at 3? And you find most of the people who goes to fetch water are young girls. So when they walk that odd time of the night, they might experience sexual and gender-based violence, because it is at night, and then after that they're supposed to be in school concentrating. Okay, so it means in terms of even quality education, they will not access quality education, because at that time in the morning they spend almost 3 hours fetching water. They are in class, they are sitting concentrating. Do you think their concentration level will be high? It will be very low, because already part of their energy was exhumed during the morning. Then the other thing that we are looking at is the issue of health, whereby these young girls, even women, can access health. Because right now when you look, we had universal health care. Is it working? And I understand that even Linda Mama has been removed. So you find that when Linda Mama has been removed, what happens to these women? Because if they cannot access funds to access basic health rights, so that means they can do anything. And actually the people who have got powers over them, they can really take advantage. So what we want, if we can have a comprehensive shelter house, whereby all the services are inclusive. Then another thing, if we can also introduce standard operating procedures for GBV prevention and response at the police training. Because one of the challenges that we are faced with is that you find that some of the police officers that we have trained, after some time they get transferred. When they get transferred, there are new people who don't even understand the issue of GBV prevention and response. So you also have to use again another resources to train these people to understand how to do what? To respond to such cases. Because number one, we are survivor-centered. Because I understand that I was asked about the perpetrator. Ours is survivor-centered. And we also have the laws whereby if you defile or you are the perpetrator, there is a law that has to be to be implemented. But you find that some of these things, even right now today, there is a match to the high judiciary, because there was this action whereby they were saying that for the perpetrator, they can be given community work to do. But remember, we are asking, what about the life of a survivor? This is somebody that she has been violated. She's traumatized. So if it doesn't work at her mental health, it means that we are not going to have a productive, productive country, because majority of women will be left behind. Because once you've been traumatized, hata ukienda job, utafanya kazi. Hautafanya kazi, because you'll be like, your self-esteem will be low. And that's why you find that sometimes people are really deviating. When you talk about sexual orientation, you don't understand the reason as to why somebody became a lesbian. You don't understand the reason as to why somebody became a gay. But when you look at deep inside, you start interrogating, you'll find maybe this person was abused at the childhood time. So we don't understand. We start judging. Oh, so Winfred is a tomboy, blah, blah, blah. So many things are happening.
You don't get to understand why. Winfred, there are very many things that you've said, and I think it would be important if we look at your program and the impact it has had, and also the information that you've collected from people who have actually used their SMS number 21094, right? So you told us that your partner is ActionAid,
Yes.
ActionAid Kenya. And joining us in the conversation is Majani Tyson, who is a learning and impact coordinator at ActionAid Kenya. Good morning, Majani.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us for this conversation as well. Before we take a break, and then you'll tell us more about this particular program, tell us about ActionAid. What does ActionAid do, and how did you start working with the Africa Youth Trust?
Thank you for having me on the show. My name is Majani Tyson, working with ActionAid as a learning and impact coordinator. ActionAid is a global movement of people working together to defeat poverty and secure justice. And we focus more on working with women who are living in poverty and exclusion. And our work is more of securing the rights of women and ensuring that women and girls have a voice right from the family level to the community and at the national level. Currently, we are partnering with the Africa Youth Trust on the Young Urban Women Movement Program, a program that is keen to ensure that young people, especially women, have the right to bodily integrity, and they are securing decent work and economic empowerment, and they also have access to quality sexual and reproductive health rights. And we're happy for the work that Africa Youth Trust has been doing on those front lines. But as you've heard from Winnie, there is quite a lot that is yet to be achieved, and there is a lot of battles to be fought to ensure that we are securing the rights of women.
Okay, let's take a break. Then we'll talk more about what drove you to start working in Mukuru, for example. Why specifically Mukuru? And what kind of numbers are we talking about? How many people have used this number? When you dig deeper, what do you establish from the community? And then how you use that information then to influence, because you're really calling on policy shift and a lot of work that's been done. What kind of data do you have? It's 8:30. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, commemorating 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And our guests this morning are right in those programs. Winfred Okumu is the Deputy Executive Director and Coordinator in the Access to Justice Project, Africa Youth Trust, and Majani Tyson, Learning and Impact Coordinator at ActionAid Kenya.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Okumu and Majani Tyson talking about gender-based violence and the work that Africa Youth Trust is doing. Winfred, you said you are working in the entire Mukuru.
Yes.
Mukuru is big. There's Mukuru kwa Njenga, Mukuru kwa Ruben, Mukuru Kayaba. Is there another Mukuru that I've missed?
Kwa Kayaba.
Ruben. Yep. So that is a huge part covering a sizable population. About how many people are we talking about?
We're talking about 700.
700,000 people in those three Mukurus.
Yeah.
Oh.
Why did you decide to concentrate in Mukuru?
Okay, we've been having a previous project in Mukuru informal sector. Before Access to Justice, we were having Shikan project whereby we were dealing with young girls in GBV prevention and response. So from that project, we realized that there were a lot of cases of sexual and gender-based violence which were going unreported.
So how did you know about them?
Because we were dealing with the young girls living in the informal sector. So during when we were sitting with them in our safe spaces, they were able to start sharing some of the ordeal experiences that they are experiencing at the household setup. So that was the time that from the evaluation, we realized that these cases needs to be attended on, and they were also sharing that they were not comfortable sharing based on the experiences. So we decided that through ActionAid, if we can have an innovative mobile technology whereby they can report such cases. So when I'm talking about 21094, it's something that you don't need a data or even a unit for you to report. Once you have a phone, whether it's Mulika Mwizi, you can still do what? You can still send the word help. And then we also encourage them to register.
Free service.
It's free service.
Okay.
So we are also encouraging them to register, because from the 21094, they're able to receive bulk SMS. Like right now, we are in 16 days of activism. They're able to get information regarding SGBV prevention and response even during election time. So it is reporting. You can report. At the same time, you can also receive
information.
you can get information based on what is happening. So we
What
decide
age group are we talking about?
age group.
Yes.
Provided you've experienced, there is no age limit.
But you were driven by the information that you're getting from
from
young-
the previous
the previous program.
Yes.
And this is with interaction with young girls
Yes.
in the community.
Yes.
I assume that these were adolescents.
Adolescents, girls. It was from the age of 15 to 25.
Do they have access to mobile phones?
Some have. Some have. Yeah, some have.
Okay.
Because we realize, when it comes to reporting cases of sexual and gender, not from the experiences, they were using police stations to report. But we realized that the environment was not conducive. Because
Explain. When you say the environment was not conducive, what do you mean?
when I say environment is not conducive, most of these police officers were causing more damage to the survivors. And again, when you look at most of the police...
How are they causing more damage?
Okay, what they were doing, instead of supporting the survivor, they were asking intimidation questions. Like, for instance, if the case happened maybe at night, they'll be asking like, what were you doing at that particular time of the night? You get it? So, we don't want to justify the action. What we need to do is to support the survivor.
Okay.
Because even this person was working at night, that one does not justify that you're supposed to.
Does this not point then to a need for the police to be trained in such matters? Because they seem to have a uniform way of dealing with people. Irrespective of what your problem is, they begin by taking the view that it is your problem. So now explain why you brought this problem upon yourself.
So what we normally do, we are not working in silos. We are using, we are working with everyone, working around access to justice. So for the police officers, we are bringing them on board and we are actually training them on SDBV prevention and response. And earlier from my conversation, I shared that these police officers, one of the challenges that we are facing with police officers is the transfer. You train them, then after some time, they are being done what? There is that transfer of police officers. So you find that is a challenge when it comes now to access to justice for survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. And one of our recommendations was if standard operating procedures for GBV prevention and response can be introduced in the curriculum for police officers training, so that when they are in their training, they are able to undergo SGBV prevention and response. And then once they've been, now they are assigned, already when they come now to the community level, they already have the information. So our role as CSOs, what we'll be doing is like a refresher course, because things changes with time.
Okay.
I want to go back to this, sorry, Ndu, before you come in, to the issue of use of technology, because it's good, it's innovative. So when you say, let's come up with this platform, 21094, send the word help, and we will then react and help you through it. Number one, so if this is an adolescent and they don't have access to a phone, then what? If this is somebody who has access to a phone, but it's a shared phone, then what? Did you get those kind of concerns from the community that, yes, I'd like to report, but then the phone I share with other people, and if I send help, everybody will know help 21094, where will go somebody, and then the information that I'm getting back. Number two, how do you get to know the person who has actually called out for help? Because people live in a household of people.
So when I'm talking about 21094, anybody can access it. It's something that we normally popularize in the community where we are working, so that we tell them, first of all, we tell them about the women's right. They need to know what are some of the women's rights, because majority of people do not know, they are not aware about the women's rights that are there. Then after that, we are also sharing about our 21094, whereby how it works. And basically, you can even report on behalf of someone if this person does not have a phone. So what normally happens, we also experience some cases whereby they report, but they don't have a phone. They use somebody else's phone. And when you call back, either the mobile phone is switched off, or you call, somebody will be saying that I didn't use that now. It's not me.
Yeah.
So what we normally do, we give them time. We give them time. So if you call, you realize that the number is not going through, you can even take like 3 days and then you call back. And then we also have working, when we're doing our sensitization, we have our offices, our satellite offices within Mkuru informal sector. We have 2 offices, one in Mkuru kwa Jenga, the other one is in Mkuru kwa Ruben. So we can even have walk-in clients. So if you don't have a phone, you can walk in and then we can support you. You get my point? So we use sensitization in that anybody can report, whether a man. Our priority is women and girls. But that does not mean that if women are also violated, we are not supporting. They also have...
if men are not, if men are being violated.
Yes, if men are being violated, they can also report. Actually, in our Survivors Network group, whereby we bring all, like this year, we have 187 survivors that have reported through our system. Now, the ones that now were either it was a domestic violence, it was rape, defilement, or attempt defilement. So right now we have 187 survivors, whereby we've trained them on economic empowerment. There are others who wants to go back to school, and we've liaised now with the TVET institution within Mkuru informal sector, whereby come next year about 18 are now going to do other short courses, and then the rest we've trained them on economic empowerment, and we are going to give them a seed capital this month. Yes.
Okay.
So it is something that we are not working in silos, and also we are popularizing. We have community forums whereby we call all the stakeholders, even the border guys. We have male champions that are also supporting us in GBV prevention and response. So we bring them on board. We even have, sometimes we also have, it's called a walk within the community, whereby we distribute the flyers. We talk even to people at the pool stations. We go to border shades. We talk to them about GBV prevention and response. So we are bringing everyone on board. But our main priority is women and girls. But that one does not mean that if women have been violated, they cannot use our system and we cannot support them. Yeah.
So for you, Majani, as you see, obviously problem brought and said, look, it needs support, whether that support comes in terms of financial aid, structures for advocacy and learning, whatever it is. So supporting groups like this. Have you seen that there has been an improvement in the situation? So when we say an improvement in the situation, obviously then we're saying, number one, lesser cases of gender-based reported, maybe lesser cases, or then the victims who then have, those who've been victims of gender-based violence, then having been gone through a healing process and then, gotten on their feet. Have you seen that as a result of the support, then we see an improved situation, or are we just where we are dealing with the same numbers?
I think there has been great improvement, especially when it comes to people reporting. Like, people are not silent when it comes to them experiencing gender-based violence. The SMS platform, like, every now and then you'll see a lot of traffic, people sending in their call for help. And I think there's also some increased awareness about GBV because of the reporting. And I would say maybe the challenge is more on the side, like Winnie mentioned, when it comes to the partnership that we have with the authorities or duty bearers like the government. When you report the case, for example, the police, you find they are not in that position to handle the GBV cases. Most of them look at it just like any other case. So they'll just interrogate someone just like it's a criminal case. So the thing that maybe needs to really improved is how our police officers are recruited and also trained. And if they cannot be taken, all of them, for example, in issues to do with handling GBV, there is need to have specialized police officers or have a gender desk at the police station with someone who is very well conversant with how to deal with GBV cases.
Maybe if I can add what Majani is saying, for instance, when we are doing police training, when you're talking about gender issues, normally the way people perceive it, it's women issues, not knowing that it cut across. So when you invite police officers even for our training, you'll find that our participants, all of them are female.
So they send the female officers.
They send the female officers, go for that training. So we decided now to change our model, whereby now instead of taking trainings now maybe to a hotel, now we do it at the police station, so that we ensure that everyone is included. Because when they look at it that it is a GBV, that's a women issue. It's not supposed to be like that. Again, when you are working on GBV, you can't you are dealing just like in our case, we are dealing with women and girls, but that does not mean that we are not incorporating men in our intervention. Then another thing we can say about this system, it has really helped because women are now reporting the cases on a daily. And I wanted you people just to try. You just register. You just send the word help, and then it will give you the options. Where are you reporting from? What kind of cases are you reporting? And then from the system, we are also getting other support apart from SGBV. Like during when there was demolition in Mkuru kwa Jenga, we realized that there were a lot of cases that were being reported, especially people wanted help, financial support. There are even men who are using our system just to report if there is scholarship that we can provide. But again, if it's outside our jurisdiction, what we do, we refer them. Because we already know some of the referral mechanism within our area of implementation. So we are able to refer appropriately. So it is a system that is working even for our survivors. There are women who came, they could not even express themselves. But through our counselor using other techniques, because she introduced sports activities, so they are able to speak about it. Actually, you'll realize that even apart from, you'll find that maybe the mother reported a case of defilement that happens to a child. Then after the woman has attended our session, you realize that even the woman is undergoing domestic violence, which was not reported. So you find when they come for our counseling session, it is a safe space whereby they open up. They are able to mingle. We even we bring the survivors that have healed, the champions. So they are able to share their story. I went through domestic violence. I made that decision because number one, it is not easy to make that decision. And especially when the perpetrator is an intimate partner. There is that, you want to leave? I don't want to leave. Personally, I'm also a survivor of GBV. You see? So the time that I was undergoing domestic violence, it was not easy for me to even to come out. Because I was like, now, how will the society perceive me? And with Luo culture, you cannot leave your husband. You have to stay there. So there was a time that it took me 1 year.
Ndo is shocked.
You're shocked. Those are cultural dynamics that women face.
Ask her why she's shocked.
So it took me 1 year to leave. And again, now, the time that I was leaving, it was very painful because we fought. And that is the time that I realized I have anger issues. You get it? I had anger issues. So I started doing self-evaluation. What if I stab this man? What? When I stab this man, definitely, because you are defending yourself. You get it? Because the man he overpowered me. So I was like, if I had something, I could have even stabbed him. So that is the time that I made decision. And another thing, I didn't want to be used as a case study. You are the person who's supposed to mentor other. Then you go for a session, you have a swollen face. You get it? Now it will be like, Winfred is the one that is mentoring us. Then she's the same person who is experiencing sexual and gender-based violence. Yeah. So what I decided, I had to make that decision. It was not easy, but you have to make it. So, when you share some of these things, and that's why you find, I have a problem with men. They do not share. They are being battered by their wives. Whichever they think, they don't share. And when you don't share, definitely you are also being affected, even in terms of your productivity. So we need to speak up. We need to share some of these things. However much the society will perceive you, you need to speak out. Because
you've brought in a new angle, which we've discussed this before, right? It's gender-based violence, which is including physical, sexual, emotional, and all.
Yes.
How do you deal with those other aspects of emotional abuse? Where, and let me just throw it out here, probably a victim of physical violence is a perpetrator of emotional violence.
Let me laugh.
It rings a bell, doesn't it?
It rings a bell. Okay, so what happens when let me not talk about the survivors, but let me talk of the people who use our system. We deal with that case that has been reported. Because we believe, like I've said, we are client-centered. So we will deal with that particular issue that has been presented. And we ensure that our survivor become part of the survivors network group. So once the counselor sits down with the survivor, she'll be able to pick up the issues that needs to be discussed. So from there, we even have a session whereby these survivors, they bring their intimate partner. And especially when it is a domestic thing. Because domestic, it's very difficult to handle. You will talk to the survivor. the perpetrator will be apprehended. The moment this person is in the cell, atakwambia please tafadhali naomba tu mwache tu cause yeye analipa nyumba. So sometimes it becomes a very challenging to handle domestic cases. It is a challenge.
Winnie, who are the partners you have? You mentioned you have people you work with in collaboration. Who are these? Rather, what do they do?
Okay, we have MSF. MSF normally support us in terms of medical aspects.
Okay.
Then we have SHOFCO. SHOFCO support us when it comes to safe house.
Okay.
Whereby we rescue the survivor because we realize that maybe that environment is very hostile. So we need to rescue the survivor into a safe space.
Okay.
So we have SHOFCO who normally support us. Then we also have Kenya Red Cross. Kenya Red Cross also help us in terms of, MSF help us even in terms of transport. We also provide transport, but also MSF, especially when it's at night and the survivor needs to be taken to the hospital. They have their ambulance on standby, whereby the survivor can now be moved from that area maybe to seek medical attention. Then we also have Makadara Law Court. So we work with Makadara Law Court during our GBV technical working group and even the court users committee, whereby we are able to identify this is a case which has really taken so much time for the survivor to access justice. So we are able to find out what are some of the challenges that this case is really taking time. How comes the process is delaying? So we also have children department that we are bringing on board because when now we are dealing with the issue of children, the children that have been violated, children who are not going to school. So we also bring them on board. So as I've said, we don't work in silos. We even have Wangukanja Foundation that is also implementing access to justice. So we are able to bring every partner that is working around access to justice, dealing with survivors of sexual and gender-based violence. And from that technical working group, we are able to pick what are some of the issues that really needs advocacy. The issues that we need to bring the policy makers on board so that we can even have the legal frameworks.
The reason why I asked the question is because when you talk about ensuring that the work you're doing actually has the impact you intended to have, then these partners have, the role that they play, apart from it being definitive, it gives an opportunity to measure it. But having heard what you've said, what the two of you have said, government intervention, perhaps specifically through the law enforcement agency known as the police service, is paramount. This issue of the curriculum that the police have and the inclusion of some of these studies that relates to what you do, how far has it gone and who have you been working with? Because if you have support from the police service, you will go a long way in achieving these goals. But so long as they treat it as, why don't you go back and sort it out? I mean, you bring the problem and they tell you ni mambo ya nyumbani, go and resolve it. And you know very well that you've come there because it can't be resolved nyumbani. So how far has the push to have this included in the police curriculum gone?
We have the National GBV Technical Working Group, whereby even the police officers are involved. But you know, in Kenya, when it comes to development of formulation of policies and even implementation of policies, it becomes a challenge. That one we have to agree with.
Okay, so haijenda mahali.
Bado iko, but we are really trying to push. We are really trying hard to push so that we can have such policies on place.
You see, police have been here and they've told us they have programs. In fact, they launched a program that would address
Polycare.
Polycare. Gender-based violence. It's at that level, at the highest level. They've launched it. It's running. The National Council on Administration of Justice has specific focus on gender-based violence. In fact, the Chief Justice was just launching a report the other day, right? How do you work with those as your organization and as ActionAid?
At the moment, we are keen to have the curriculum, the police training curriculum reviewed so that the police are equipped and are in a position to handle gender-based violence cases. And it's a work in progress. There is a lot of advocacy happening. And for now, I think where we are at the moment, we are still in that, establishing and creating awareness on the need for us to have the police have their way of training reviewed and updated, because it's not up to date.
Okay.
Yeah.
At the grassroots level, the chief is also very important.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll attest to that.
Yes.
How also do you work with the national government administration officers?
So during our community forums, we invite them. During our community forums, we also community forums and even the trainings, so they are able even to get the information. And once there's a case that maybe it has been handled, we normally call them kangaroo court, which also interferes with justice for survivors of sexual violence. And we realize that majority of the people who are fueling kangaroo court was the area chief and even the nyumba kumi, because you find that the perpetrator is somebody who has got money, and now he goes and pays that kesi wacha tu tumalizie tu hapa. So what we realized, we had a meeting with them and told them some of the side effects, because when this person has not accessed justice, definitely this person self-esteem will go down, and even in terms of productivity, that person will not be productive in the society. So we bring them on board.
You work with them?
Yeah, we work with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
We want to thank you very much for joining us today. Winfred Okumu, Deputy Executive Director at Africa Youth Trust, and from ActionAid Kenya, Majani Tyson, Learning and Impact Coordinator. Asanteni sana for all the work that you're doing. Keep doing it. Yeah, never give up. There are people who are actually benefiting from the work that you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Keep it
Thank
here
you
for more
having us.
conversations. Karibuni tena.